Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today we're going to take a look inside Oceans of Fire, the Pacific Theater in World War II. This is a game designed by Rob Bama and is published by Compass Games. Well, I just got this big hefty box of goodness in the mail, and it is going to be an interesting game to work through. If you've seen the Learn to Play on the channel, you'll already have a familiarity with this system and how it's going to work. This is going to be something that's going to take some effort to grok, but after that, you're still going to have to work out sequencing in your head because you're not doing your full turn and then the other player does their full turn. You're doing everything step by step through impulses, which I love a lot more because it's a lot more interactive. There's a lot more back and forth very quickly. There's no waiting for the other guy to do their turn, and they don't have to wait for you to do your turn. It increases the pace of the game and the involvement of the game for both players a lot more, I think. So let's take a look at the back of the box and see what this game's all about. Oceans of Fire is an area movement strategic simulation of the Pacific Theater of Operations in World War II. Players command the Japanese, American, and British Commonwealth naval, air, and ground forces that fought in the Pacific and Southeast Asia. The Netherlands forces that fought in the Dutch East Indies and the Chinese forces that fought in Burma are also included. The map runs from India to the west coast of the United States and from the Aleutians to Australia. The game is designed for 2 or 3 players, but solitaire play or team play can easily be accommodated. Now, it goes on for 3 more pretty lengthy and detailed paragraphs that I'm not going to go into for keeping the back of the box reading here short, but it does give you a good detail as to the overall composition of the game. So if you want to go check out the back of the box on the Compass website, it would be good to do so. On the right-hand side we have the components. We have one 34 by 44 inch map, 2 counter sheets of 1.5 inch by 3/4 inch naval units, and 4 9/16 inch counter sheets of ground units, air units, and markers, for a total of 1,080 counters. A deck of 67 event cards, 1 rulebook, 1 playbook, 1 naval battle board, 8 player aid cards, 3 reinforcement cards, 3 force pool cards, 3 carrier air displays, 1 victory point and resource card, 1 unit key card, 1 expanded sequence of play, and 6 10-sided dice. It is rated as a 7 out of 10 on the complexity scale. Time scale is 6 months per turn. Map scale is variable sized areas. Unit scale, ground divisions and brigades. Naval, 1 to 4 ships, more for subs and transports. Air, 30 aircraft per air point. And it's for 2 or 3 players, but can accommodate solitaire or team play. Solitaire suitability is set at 7. Playing time is 2 hours for the introductory scenario. The short scenarios average an evening of play, and the campaign will take a weekend. And it is recommended for ages 14 and up. So let's take a look inside and see what we get. All right, we have 2 decks of cards, pack of dice, sealed for freshness, our baggies, rulebook, playbook, our shrink-wrapped counter sheets. We have a whole bunch of player aids that are banded together, and our map. So let's set up the map and take a closer look at the game. And here's a look at the map that comes with the game. It is going to be a sizable map at 34 by 44 inches. But not only do you need to have space for the map, you're also going to need space for your player aids, which there are several that you'll be using in the game to keep track of units and just to have player aids out there for reference, things like that. So it will have a pretty large footprint on the table, just to keep that in mind. It's a beautifully done map. Compass did a fantastic job with it. Not only the graphics, but also the information is very easy to read on it. Both of these maps, there are 2, just lay one on top of the other, are cardstock maps, not your paper maps. So it's going to be a little bit thicker, a little more resilient from taking any damage when you get ham-fisted like I can get sometimes with my games. But as you can see, it's an area movement map, and there are different areas across the map. You have land areas, you've got sea areas, you've got mixed areas like these little circles here that are going to be a mix of sea and islands. You're going to have your land in there. And you're going to have plenty of other information on the maps. You've got your division capacity listed on the left-hand side and the air capacity listed on the right for each section that you'll be looking at. Those are the two sets of numbers there. Then you've also got these ports, like this white port here with a red 2. You've got a white port over here with a black 3. And then over in Manila, you've got the yellow port with a black 9. What you're going to be doing here is these are minor ports, these white ones. This is where you're going to be docking your ships. Now, for the red numbers, you can't have your capital ships there, but the black ones can. The yellow ones can take any ship, and that's where you're going to be doing your refits and repairs, things like that, at those ports. Then you've also got supply depot information, the standard supply depot symbol down here in Australia for the Allies, and then the red ones up there in Japan for the Japanese. And on top of that, you're also going to have resource markers. And in this game, resources are going to be primarily for the Japanese because that's how they're going to get their command points. And you get a set amount of command points for the first couple turns, and after that, it's variable based on the resources you have. So for the Japanese, it's imperative that they get out there, take as much land, take as many resources as they can, so that way they can have the command points available to fight. If the Allies can get out there and take away those command points from them, get those resources, it's going to really hinder the Japanese. So I like how Rob has just made that historical tie-in to the game. So that way it forces the Japanese player to expand out. It's not like, hey, I'm just going to turtle here, make the Allies come to me. No, they've got to expand out if they want to have the capability to fight effectively. And we've got the British box over here, the New Zealand box here, the US box over on the right-hand side. These are going to be the off-map boxes that are just going to allow the areas that are off the map, literally, to house the units that you'll be needing from those locations. You also have a China-Burma box up there. At the top, we've got the general records track and the Japanese command points, replacements, the command points available, and the activation points available. On the left-hand side, we see the turn record track. So lots of information on this map, and it seems a little intimidating at first, but once you dig into it and you start reading through the rules, it makes a lot of sense. And it's also gone over in great detail by the game developer Kevin Bernatz in our Learn to Play video. Now we'll take a look at the player aids, and there are a bunch of them. On this first sheet, we have the map key, which is going to give you more detail on the items that I've already talked about when we looked at the map itself. Going to give you a breakdown of all the different areas on the maps. One of the things I didn't talk about with the air passages here, the yellow arrows, the Japanese nav air passages, which are the orange arrows. And then, of course, there's even Arctic weather down at the bottom right, which is going to be up north at the top part of the map, the Aleutians, the Kamchatka Peninsula. Those are going to be primarily the areas where you're going to have the Arctic weather. And on the back, it's going to give us a breakdown of the different counters in the game. At the top, we have a listing of the nationality colors, a breakdown of the ground units, the facility markers over here, control markers. Then we have the naval units, ground-based air points, carrier-based air points, and then leaders, which is an optional role. So you easily understand all the counters used in the game. Next, we have the expanded sequence of play, which is going to give us a breakdown of all of the steps in the turn. And as you can see, there are quite a few. On the back, we have all of the steps of the operations sequence. On the next sheet, we have the naval bombing table, submarine attack table, ASW table, which is an optional role, strategic warfare table, and the naval transport chart. On the back, we have USL-1 and USL-2 effect charts. On the next sheet, we have the air combat, anti-aircraft fire, and the surrender tables. On the back of that, we have the ground combat results table and the ground combat loss matrix. Next, we have the naval and air interception table and the carrier surface battle determination. On the back, we have the surface naval combat table and the naval disengagement table. Next, we have the command points chart and the command points per round. On the back, we have the activation cost chart and the map notes. Next, we have the victory point list, which is going to give us the location of all the victory points, as well as their victory point value on the left-hand side. And that carries over to the back of the sheet. Next, we have the battle board with the Allies at the bottom and the Japanese at the top. Each side's going to be the same. This is where you're going to lay out your main or screening forces, your screened force, ground-based air, carrier air, pursuing ships, and your disengaging ships. On the back, we have the garrison rules, Chinese movement, and Chinese activation restrictions. Then we have the Commonwealth replacements, redeployments, and ship repair points, as well as the Commonwealth starting units. On the back, we have a listing of all the reinforcement units and their turn of arrival. Next, we have the same for the United States, U.S. replacements, redeployments, and ship repair points, as well as the starting units. On the back, it lists out all the U.S. reinforcements as well as their turn of arrival. Then we have the same for the Japanese, giving their replacement, redeployment, and ship repair points as well as their starting units. And on the back, just like the previous two, we have a listing of the reinforcements and their turn of arrival. Next, we have the U.S. carrier display. And then we have the Japanese carrier display. And we have some smaller player aid cards. First off is the Commonwealth carrier display, U.S. force pool card, Commonwealth force pool card, and then the Japanese force pool card. Next, we'll take a look at a few examples of the cards that come with the game, and this is for the advanced rules only. At the top, we have the national cards. At the bottom, we have the common cards. We have a U.S. card, a Japanese card, and a Commonwealth card. Each of these is going to be drawn from the various decks, and this will have different effects: combat, political, reaction, or other effects. For example, here for the silent service for the U.S. submarines receive a +1 DRM in naval combat and strategic warfare this turn. Only playable on turns 3 through 8. Any aircraft upgrades, one of the common cards. Any aircraft batteries are augmented. Add a +1 DRM to all friendly AA fire during this impulse. Ultra. Japanese codes are broken. The Commonwealth player only may inspect all but one, which is determined randomly, of the Japanese player's event cards. Draw another card from the Commonwealth deck. And Divine Wind. The Japanese player may now use air units as kamikaze units. The number that can be used this impulse is 8 air points on turn 6, 10 air points on turn 7, or 12 air points on turn 8. So you can see as the war goes on, the Japanese use more and more desperate measures by more heavily using their kamikaze pilots. Next, we'll take a look at the counter sheets that come with the game. On the left-hand side, we have the Commonwealth and the U.S. control markers. On the control marker, you're going to have different information. You're going to have your anti-aircraft value, the attack factor, and the intrinsic ground defense quality, as well as some of them will have unit quality. Then we have some Japanese forces. We've got U.S. forces. We've got some Commonwealth forces, and then we have leaders for Japan, the U.S., and the Commonwealth. On the next sheet, we have more Commonwealth forces, and then these other markers here are all going to be your ground-based air points and your carrier-based air points. On the next sheet, we have more ground-based and carrier-based air points, as well as some administrative markers. Some more administrative markers. And on the last two sheets, we have our naval units. At the top, we have the Japanese forces, Commonwealth forces, and then the U.S. forces at the bottom. And then we finish that out on the last counter sheet with the remainder of the U.S., Commonwealth, and the Japanese naval forces. Next up, we have the rules. This is a 96-page full-color rulebook. On the inside of the front cover and the first page, we have the table of contents listing out all the rules and their associated page numbers. This is a 96-page rulebook, like I said, so I'm not going to go through every page in this rulebook like I normally do, where I kind of go into it a little more detail. Here, what I'm going to do is just kind of flip through so you can see it. We start off with the introduction, gives you a component list, a breakdown of the components, all the things we've looked at already, the units, the counters, the different types of counters and how to use them in the game, how to understand them. And then we get to the sequence of play on page 13. So the first 12 pages are supporting text, and then we get into the sequence of play and the breakdown there from page 13 on. This is going to give you plenty of examples. You've got both text examples and illustrated examples throughout, some design notes sprinkled in, quite a bit of those actually, to give you Rob's idea as far as what he was trying to model historically for each of these aspects of the game. Supply determination, reinforcements, associated units. Another illustrated example here. A couple more illustrated examples. More illustrated examples. This is definitely filled with plenty of illustrated examples, as well as, again, design notes and text examples. Lots to get you to understand here in this game, and a lot of supporting information to help you grok it. Air missions, ground support, naval missions, defensive shore bombardment, operations, restrictions and additional combat and movement. A couple more great illustrated examples. Seems like every page we turn, pretty much, there's either a text example or an illustrated example of play. Naval combat, surface battle round resolution, naval damage, disengagement, pursuit, submarine combat, anti-aircraft combat, your fire procedures, fire results, ground combat, mandatory ground combat procedure, combat results. Love the illustrations that are also used, like this one here. Then we have the overrun combat, end of impulse round, the interphase actions, Japanese resource and VP check, strategic warfare, construction options, replacements, using RPs on air units, redeployments. Then we have some special rules here on page 92, garrisons, and then national cooperation, and then we're at the back of the rules. And lastly, we have the playbook. This is a 68-page full-color book. Inside of the front cover, we have the table of contents listing out all of the different sections and their associated page numbers. We have advanced rules that go on for about 5 pages. Then we have optional rules, scenarios, expanded example of play, designers and developers notes, player notes, bibliography, card index, glossary and index, counter sheet manifest, and the activation cost chart. So we start off with the advanced rules: severe weather, kamikaze attacks, armor bonus, special naval landing forces, air combat quality, military leaders, event cards, which we've already looked at when we were checking out those cards for both the common cards and the national cards, how to use the cards. And then we have play balance, which is a variable. When you select sides, victory conditions, optional rules, you have optional naval rules, carrier optional rules, extra carrier capacity, submarine optional rules, decoys, transport optional rules, transport losses, movement point penalty for ports, optional damage rules, scuttling, which is neutral, accelerated U.S. repair, enhanced interceptions for Japan, optional air rules, air unit nationality losses, air loss percentages, Japanese LBA, removing aborts, disruptions at the end of the impulse, air and mixed areas, national cooperation, forts and airfields, intensive attacks, British amphibious capability, attacking cross ground straits, purchasing RPs, and then we get to our scenarios on page 15. We have 5 scenarios: the Solomon Islands, Midway, Japanese expansion, Guadalcanal, and then the campaign game of the Pacific War from 1941 through 1945. We get a listing here of the starting units for both the Japanese and the Allies, the duration, the map area, initial control, initial setup, markers, special rules, Japanese reinforcements and replacements, Allied reinforcements and replacements, additional special rules for the scenario, and then the victory conditions. And each of the scenarios is going to be listed out the same way. It's going to give you an example of the area of play and then the out of play areas on the map. Midway scenario. Japanese expansion scenario, which is 3 turns. Guadalcanal scenario, which is 2 turns. And then the Pacific War campaign scenario, which is 8 turns. And then we have the expanded example of play here on page 29, which is going to give you turn 1, round 1. It's going to walk you through all the steps in the turn so you can set up the game and play along with it, so that way you can better grok everything. Breaks down Japanese impulse on round 1. Great illustrated examples. I love how it's written in a narrative format so you can not only just read it and enjoy it, but you can follow along a lot more easy than when it's just kind of sterile and it just says do this, do this, do this. Goes on for quite a while, and that goes to page 44. Then we have designer and developers notes. Designer notes from Rob Bama. I'm going to give you all his ideas behind the design intent. Then the developers notes from Kevin Bernatz. Player notes for Japan, the US, and the Commonwealth. Then the bibliography, if you're curious to read more. Then the card appendix here, which is going to break down all the cards, explain it to you. Glossary and index. Great reference material right there. Then we have the counter manifest, the next few sheets. And then on the back we have the activation cost chart. And that is a look at everything you get inside of Oceans of Fire, the Pacific War and World War II. This is a game designed by Rob Bama and is published by Compass Games. Well, as I said at the beginning, this is a big, hefty box full of goodness, and you can see all of it that you get in this box. And taking a look through the rules, I didn't go through a detailed look like I normally do. That's because it's a long rule book. It's like 100 pages, almost 98 pages. So there's a lot of detail there, a lot of things to absorb and soak in. 5 different scenarios. You start off with a short one, and then you can build out all the way up to the campaign. The way the rulebook is laid out, it looks like it's going to be pretty straightforward to understand the concepts. It's just putting them all together, which is going to take some time. But there's plenty of great supporting material in there. A lot of illustrated examples, a lot of text examples, as well as design notes, so that way you know what Rob was thinking when he designed all these aspects of the game. Again, you're going to need a large table space for this because you got a 34 by 44 inch map. You've got a ton of player aids as well that you're going to have out there, so you're going to need a good amount of table space. Great game for a convention. I like the addition of the cards too, not to make it a CDG, but to add in events in the game and different abilities. That's all part of the advanced rules. You don't have to use them if you don't want to, but it's a great thing to add in to give a little bit more flavor and variability to the games. Love the counters, love the quality of them. They fall right out of the tree. You got to be careful when you take them out. That's why they're shrink wrapped. I had several I had to put back in when I took them out of the shrink wrap myself, but graphics on them look great. Nice, thick, great quality as always from Compass, and just overall just fantastic production quality on this game. This map is really great too because paper maps, when you get large paper maps, even though we're going to put plexi on them, when you open them up, they do have a tendency to tear a lot of times. With the cardstock map, you're not going to have that problem. And like I said, we do have a learn to play video on the channel. So if you are reading the rulebook and you want to have some additional information to help you out with Grok in the game, check out the learn to play video. And hopefully that will give you a good leg up in getting this game on the table. Well, I hope that helps you guys out if you'd be curious about this one. If you have any comments or questions, post them down below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.